All right, I'll call the Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 7th to order. Daisy, can you confirm that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided?
Yes, I can confirm that the packet was posted and the required notice was provided.
Thank you, Daisy. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rogers?
Here.
Commissioner McFadden?
Here.
Commissioner Mike Sell?
Here.
Commissioner Alt?
Here.
Commissioner Farber?
Here.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Van Coveren?
Here.
And Chair Waters?
Here.
So with 7 out of 7 members, we have a quorum and we can proceed with business.
Thank you, Daisy. Are there any corrections to the minutes of the March 17th meeting? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'd make that motion. Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the minutes of the March 17th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move into new business. It does not, go ahead, Dustin.
And under just came in, so I think we do have the applicant for 3.2.
Oh.
3.1.
3.1, yes.
Okay. All right, I'll let the staff proceed with application ZMA 26-001.
All right.
Page.
Sounds good. All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Our first item today is application number ZMA 26-001, a request for a zoning map amendment for the 9 South Edition. Go to the next slide. So this is an agenda of what we will talk through. I will talk through an overview of the application, a vicinity map, some background on the property, the nature of what's being requested, which includes both a rezoning request and 2 requested landscaping variations, the applicable regulations, staff's analysis, comments we received from neighboring property owners, staff's findings, the alternatives available for the commission, and staff's recommendation. So the application overview, starting with the application overview, the applicant, 9 South Development LLC, represented by Jeff Mays of Compro Realty, is requesting a zoning map amendment from C3 Shopping Center to PC5 Planned Service Commercial. The subject property is approximately 8.31 acres located on the east side of Marketplace. That's the South 9th Street frontage road, situated between the Marketplace Apartments to the north and Sam's Club to the south. The legal description for this property is lots 1 through 8, block 1 of the replat of 9 South Edition, and the property is currently zoned C3 and is vacant and undeveloped. The comprehensive plan designates this property for commercial use. In terms of surrounding context, to the north is an R3 zone, is R3 zoning, which is the Marketplace apartment complex. To the south is PC3, which includes Sam's Club, and related commercial uses. To the east is R2 single or multiple family residential, along Highland Avenue. And to the west is C5 commercial uses, including Tucson's, Arby's, Olive Garden, and a vacant building. And the applicant's proposed use is multi-use, multi-tenant commercial, retail, and office center. You can move forward. So this is a vicinity map. You can see the subject property. It is the highlighted vacant property. It's highlighted in blue. And then on the west side, you can see the frontage road and then South 9th Street. On the west side, or the east side, you can see the residential neighborhood along Highland Avenue, and then the commercial uses that surround the other sides of the property. A brief history of this property. This site was historically known as the Dooley Pumpkin Patch. It was annexed in 1971 and sat zoned A1 agricultural for nearly 50 years without being platted or developed. 9 South Development LLC purchased the property in 2017 and pursued rezoning. On January 7, 2019, the City Commission approved ordinance number 18-10926, rezoning the site from A1 to C3. At that time, no specific uses were proposed. Shortly before that, in December of 2018, the original 4-lot final plat was approved and public infrastructure was constructed, including the extension of Marketplace, water, sanitary sewer, and the stormwater detention pond. You'll see referenced as Lot 1 on the current replat. And then most recently, on December 17th, 2024, the Planning Commission approved a replat, Application P18-1B, that reconfigured the subdivision into its current form, 8 lots and 2 common access drives designated as Reserves A and B. As part of the replat, a variation from the street frontage requirement under Section 3672 was granted for lots 3, 5, and 8, which are the interior lots accessed by those drives rather than a public street. And the City Commission subsequently accepted the revised easement dedications on the replat at its November 24th, 2025 meeting. So now to the heart of the request, the applicant is asking to rezone from C3 Shopping Center District to PC5 Planned Service Commercial. The proposed uses, restaurants, retail, professional offices, and multi-tenant centers are already permitted under the C3 district. The rezoning is being sought for one specific purpose: to access the C5 sign regulations. The replat of the property created 3 interior lots. Those would be lots 3, 5, and 8 that are not directly visible from Marketplace or South 9th Street. To propose identification for businesses on those lots, the applicant proposes to place a shared pole or monument sign in Reserve C, which is highlighted on your screen, a small common area tract along the west boundary between lots 4 and 6. Because that sign would be located on a separate tract from the businesses it advertises, it would be classified as an advertising sign or an off-premise sign under Section 42-5061. And off-premise signs are prohibited in the C3 district under Section 42-521-1, but they are permitted in the C5 district. So by rezoning to PC5, the applicant gains access to the C5 sign regulations. In addition to the rezoning, the applicant is requesting 2 landscape regulation variations, both applying specifically to lots 3, 5, and 8, the interior lots. The authority for these variations comes from Section 42-4097, which allows the restrictions of the underlying district to be modified by the ordinance approving a planned commercial district. So these variations, if granted, would be embedded directly in the rezoning ordinance. First, the applicant is requesting full relief from the front yard landscaping requirement. The basis for this request is that these are interior lots with frontage along the access drives, not public streets. The frontage lots 2, 4, 6, and 7 will handle the street-facing landscaping along Marketplace. And the second, the applicant requests full relief from the rear landscape buffer requirement. The buffer is this 15-foot planted buffer required when commercial development abuts residential development, in this case along the eastern boundary adjacent to the R2 neighborhood on Highland Avenue. The applicant argues that the existing residential fencing provides screening and that applying the buffer would significantly constrain building placement, parking layout, and internal circulation on those already constrained interior lots. And the applicant cites 2 specific site hardships that they believe support both requests. First would be the 50-foot right-of-way dedication required for the Marketplace extension, which reduced the developable depth of the property. And the second, the single frontage infill nature of the site, which limits overall flexibility for development and circulation. On that, I just wanted to note, as part of the applicant's request, they have provided a 4-page overview, which was provided in your packets detailing their request. They also provided the 2 exhibits showed on the screen, but also provided in today's packet. Those exhibits are intended to demonstrate the landscaping restraints on one specific lot, in this case, lot 5. So, exhibit apologies, I'm getting there. Okay. So exhibit 1 is if the accepted or the requested landscape variations were approved. And exhibit 2 is if the required landscaping was in place. This is intended to showcase the restriction on overall development if the required landscaping if the landscaping is required. So we can move on to slide 8. So the current C3 district was designed for a broad range of retail shopping facilities, primarily consisting of specialty shops and stores on a site of no less than 1 acre. The proposed C5 district, which is the underlying district for the PC5 zoning request, is designed for business and commercial uses that draw customers from motorists on the highway or for which a highway or arterial location is especially useful or necessary. And planned commercial zoning, or the PC prefix in the requested zoning, enables commercial development that may need to deviate from the underlying district regulations in order to accommodate innovative site planning that's compatible with surrounding development and minimizes impacts on infrastructure. The PC number identifies the underlying commercial district, so PC5 uses C5 as its baseline zoning, and all permitted uses and restrictions follow the C5 service commercial zoning unless the approving ordinance says otherwise. The next would be the development standards. This slide summarizes the C5 development standards that would apply as the baseline if PC5 zoning is approved, subject to any conditions in the approving ordinance. A couple of highlights. Signage under C5 permits all functional and structural types, including off-premise advertising signs at up to 4 square feet per lineal foot of building frontage and a maximum height of 50 feet. Setbacks include a 25-foot front yard setback and 10-foot side and rear yard setbacks where abutting a residential district. Screening requires 6-foot site obscuring screening along all lot lines abutting a residential district, though this requirement is waived if the non-residential use is 100 or more feet from the residential lot line. And then number 4, exterior lighting must be shaded to avoid direct light on the residential property. Next, we'll highlight the landscaping regulations. So front yard landscaping. Front yard landscaping is required in applicable zoning districts when adjacent to public streets. 2, the amount of required front yard landscaping is based on lot depth and lineal feet of street frontage. There's a minimum of 1 shade tree or 3 ornamental trees per 500 square feet of required front yard landscaping. And for lots 3, 5, and 8, the interior lots of this subdivision, front yard landscaping is calculated using the frontage attribution method established in Plat Note 7 of the replat, which as we discussed, because lots 3, 5, and 8 are accessible from the common access roads and a access easement across the front of those lots, the landscaping requirements are attributed through their frontage on those access points. Parking lot land, parking lot rear yard landscaping. Rear yard landscaping is required where non-residential development abuts residential development. There's a minimum of a 15-foot wide reducible buffer that is reducible to 10 feet for developments with more than one required buffer. Planting requirements include 1 shade tree and 5 shrubs, or 2 ornamental trees and 5 shrubs per 50 lineal feet, at least 1/3 of which must be evergreen. And no buildings, driveways, or accessory facilities may be located within the required rear landscaping buffer. And I did want to highlight the parking lot landscaping. Parking lot landscaping is required for parking lots with more than 50 spaces. Landscaped islands must equate to 5% of the total paved area, and open parking areas must be screened to a height of 3 feet adjacent to streets. So the applicant is requesting relief from the first two. However, they are still proposing to do or planning to do the parking lot landscaping as required. The following matters shall be considered when approving or disapproving a rezoning request. So these are the criteria that the Planning Commission must review, and we will go through in our staff analysis. Number 1, the character of the neighborhood and the uses and zoning of nearby property. 2, the suitability of the subject property for development with uses permitted under existing zoning. 3, the availability of public facilities and services to support the uses permitted on the subject property under the proposed zoning. 4, the conformance of the requested change to the city's comprehensive plan. And 5, any other information or factors relevant to the subject rezoning request. So, starting with the rezoning itself, the applicant is not seeking to intensify the allowed uses on the property. The anticipated uses, restaurants, retail, professional offices, multi-tenant retail, are all permitted in the existing C3 district. The change to a PC5 classification is being requested specifically to access the C5 sign regulations, which permit off-premise advertising signs. The lot configuration approved in the replat, with interior lots served by common access drives rather than the public street frontage, creates a need for a shared identification sign on the street frontage. In regard to suitability under existing zoning, the C3 district already permits all of the uses the applicant has identified. The gap is in the prohibition of off-premise advertising signs under section 42-521-1. Interior lots 3, 5, and 8 have no direct visibility from Marketplace or South 9th Street. The replat's lot configuration, which the applicant designed, is what created this visibility gap, and PC5 resolves it by providing access to the C5 sign standards. In regard to character of the neighborhood, the site is squarely within the South 9th Street commercial corridor. It's flanked by commercial to the south and to the west. It has the Marketplace apartments to the north, and then the eastern boundary is where the site meets the R2 residential neighborhood along Highland Avenue, and that interface is at the center of the landscaping variation discussion. Public utilities and services, all infrastructure is in place. Marketplace, the water and sewer systems, the curb cuts on South 9th Street, and the stormwater detention facility are built. The change from C3 to PC5 with the intended C3 uses does not change the intensity of uses and therefore does not generate any additional infrastructure demand beyond what was already planned for the subdivision. On conformance with the comprehensive plan, the future land use map designates this property commercial, which is consistent with PC5. The location and development criteria outlined in the comprehensive plan are met. The site is on a major arterial. It sits between high-density residential and a major commercial anchor. Shared access drives serve multiple lots, and the reciprocal easement agreements provide cross-access between uses. I do want to flag the comprehensive plan criterion that speaks directly to today's discussion. The plan calls for transitions between commercial development and less intense adjacent uses to minimize the impact of noise, light, traffic, and intensity of commercial uses. That criterion is squarely at issue in the rear landscape buffer request, and I will cover the staff's analysis of the landscaping request now. Starting with front yard landscaping, if full relief is granted for lots 3, 5, and 8, there would be no required landscaping transition between the access drives and the parking and building areas on those lots. That said, staff notes that the front yard landscaping requirement was designed primarily for lots fronting public streets, and lots 3, 5, and 8 front internal access drives, not public streets. The frontage lots 2, 4, 6, and 7 will carry the full front yard landscaping obligation along Marketplace, and parking lot landscaping, including the 5% island requirement, remains applicable regardless of the requested front yard landscaping variation. On rear yard landscaping, if full relief is granted, no landscape buffer would exist between the commercial development and adjacent residential properties. Only the 6-foot site obscuring screening requirement would remain. Buildings, parking, and site improvements could extend to the minimum building setback with no vegetative transition. A planted buffer provides noise reduction, light filtering, aesthetic softening, and heat island mitigation that a fence cannot replicate. Comprehensive plan development criteria call for transitions that minimize noise, light, and intensity on adjacent residential areas. Staff would note there is a 20-foot utility easement containing an 8-inch water main and overhead electric lines along the east boundary of 9 South that abuts the residential to the east. Per section 4263A, a property owner may place non-structural improvements within a utility easement at their own risk, but the risk of conflict with underground and overhead utilities is elevated when you do place landscaping in a utility easement. Overall, the Planning Commission's decisions on landscape variations, the Commission has the discretion to grant full relief, partial relief, or no relief for each variation independently. The front and rear yard buffer requests do not need to be identical in how the Planning Commission sees the appropriate level of relief. Because this development has more than one required buffer, the code allows the rear buffer to be reduced from 15 feet to 10 feet. The Commission could also consider requiring a reduced buffer with enhanced screening, varying relief by lot, or requiring a reduced landscaping standard along the access drive frontages. So the decision before you today is multifaceted. You have the discretion to pick the amount of relief that you would like to give, if any, from the landscape regulations. Staff would like to make the Commission aware that we received input from neighboring property owners. Staff first met with Mr. Glenn Boyd, owner of 2824 Highland Avenue, on March 30th, 2026, to discuss the application. Mr. Boyd's property abuts the eastern boundary of the 9 South Addition. Mr. Boyd's concerns centered on the requested elimination of the rear landscape buffer. Additionally, staff met with Mr. Dale Merklin on behalf of Gene Pauls, who is the owner of 2820 Highland Avenue, on April 3rd, 2026, to discuss the application. Ms. Paul's property abuts the eastern boundary of the 9 South Addition. Mr. Merklin's concerns also centered on the requested elimination of the rear landscape buffer. A summary of staff's communication with neighboring property owners has been provided in today's meeting packet for the Planning Commission's consideration of the requested variations to the landscape regulations. Moving into staff's findings, we'll start with staff's findings in support of approving the rezoning from C3 to PC5. Factor 1, suitability of the property for development under existing zoning. The property is currently zoned C3, which permits the full range of uses proposed by the applicant. However, the C3 district prohibits off-premise advertising signs under section 42-521-1. The replat created interior lots 3, 5, and 8, that are not visible from Marketplace or South 9th Street, without the ability to erect a shared identification sign on the street frontage. These interior lots could face a marketability constraint. The PC5 classification addresses this constraint by providing access to the C5 sign regulations. Number 2, the proposed change would not create an isolated district. The property is bordered by PC3 zoning to the south and C5 zoning to the west. PC5 zoning is consistent with the existing pattern of planned commercial and service commercial districts in the South 9th Street corridor. Factor 2, character of the neighborhood. The property is situated within the established South 9th Street commercial corridor and is bordered by commercial development on two sides, with uses limited to C3 as recommended by staff. The use profile would remain consistent with the surrounding commercial area and with the expectations established when the property was originally rezoned from A1 to C3 in 2018. Factor 3, adequacy of public facilities and services. All public infrastructure needed to serve a commercial development is already in place, including water, sanitary sewer, the Marketplace Road extension, curb cuts on South 9th Street, and the stormwater detention facility. The change from C3 to PC5 with C3 use limitations would not change the intensity of uses allowed and would not create additional demand on infrastructure. Factor 4, conformance with the comprehensive plan. The future land use map designates this property for commercial uses. The requested PC5 zoning with C3 use limitations is consistent with this designation and meets the applicable location and development criteria for commercial land use areas. And we'll move on to staff's findings in support of approval of the landscape variations. The front yard landscaping along lots 3, 5, and 8. The lots are interior and not directly visible from the public right-of-way. The frontage attributed to these lots under Plat Note 7 is along the internal common area access drives, not public streets. Landscaping placed along these internal frontages provides limited public benefit. The frontage lots 2, 4, 6, and 7, will provide the full front yard landscaping along Marketplace, where the development interfaces with the public right-of-way. And 3, parking lot landscaping requirements under section 4265-7, including the 5% landscape island requirement and 3-foot screening requirement, would still apply regardless of any front yard variation. In regard to the rear landscape buffer, existing residential fencing provides ground level visual screening along the eastern boundary. A 20-foot utility easement containing an 8-inch water main and overhead electric lines runs along the entire eastern boundary, limiting the practical utility of plantings in that area. And 3, the full buffer would significantly restrict building placement, parking layout, and internal circulation on the interior lots, which are already constrained in depth. And a finding in support of both variations, the 50-foot right-of-way dedication for the Marketplace extension and the single frontage condition of the site create a practical difficulty in meeting both the front yard landscaping and rear buffer requirements while allowing reasonable development of the interior parcels. Next, staff's findings in support of denying the landscape variations. Number one, the landscape regulations under 4265-1 serve purposes beyond public visibility, including environmental quality, stormwater management, energy efficiency, and shade. Full elimination on 3 of 7 buildable lots would result in no required landscape transition between the access drives and the parking and building areas on these lots. The lot configuration, including the interior lots served by access drives, is the result of the developer's own replat design. The constraints created by the configuration do not constitute a hardship imposed by forces beyond the developer's control. In regard to the rear landscape buffer, the rear buffer under section 4265-6 exists specifically to protect residential properties from the direct impacts of adjacent commercial development. A screening fence does not provide the same environmental buffering as a planted landscape buffer, including noise reduction, light filtering, and heat island mitigation. The residential lots along Highland Avenue have relatively short rear yards, reducing the effective separation distance between dwelling units in the proposed commercial development and increasing the importance of a buffer as a transition element. 3, the comprehensive plan development criteria state that transitions between commercial development and less intense adjacent uses should minimize the impacts of noise, light, traffic operations, and intensity. The landscape buffer is the code's primary regulatory tool for achieving this transition along the eastern boundary. And 4, a neighboring property owner has expressed opposition to the elimination of the rear buffer as documented in section 5 of the staff report. The Planning Commission would have the following alternatives. The Planning Commission could recommend approval of PC5 zoning, including the requested landscape variations, in full, subject to appropriate conditions. The Planning Commission could recommend approval of the PC5 zoning without granting the requested, let me restart. Number one, the Planning Commission could recommend approval of PC5 zoning, including the requested landscape variations, in full, subject to appropriate conditions. 2, the Planning Commission could recommend approval of PC5 zoning while modifying the requested landscape variations, subject to appropriate conditions. 3, the Planning Commission could recommend approval of PC5 zoning without granting the requested landscape variations, requiring full compliance with the landscaping regulations of section 4265. 4, the Planning Commission could recommend that consideration of this application be postponed to a specific date and time to allow the applicant or staff to provide additional information. And this motion would need to include a specific meeting date. Or 5, the Planning Commission could recommend denial of this application provided appropriate findings are made. Staff's recommendation with respect to the application's requested variations from the landscape regulations of section 4265, staff recommends that the Planning Commission determine the appropriate level of relief for each variation based on the findings, discussion, and property owner input presented in this report. The Commission has the discretion to grant full relief, partial relief, or no relief for each of the 2 requested variations. Independently, these options include, for the front yard landscaping, you could grant full relief with landscaping concentrated on the marketplace frontage lots. You could require a reduced landscaping standard along the drive frontage. Or 3, you could require full compliance with section 4265-5. In regard to the rear landscape buffer, you could grant full relief with the 6-foot screening requirement remaining in place. You could require a reduced buffer width of 10 feet as permitted under section 4265-6B1 for developments with more than one required buffer. 3, you could require a reduced buffer combined with enhanced screening such as evergreen plantings or a masonry wall. Or 4, you could require full compliance with section 4265-6. That is a 15-foot buffer or a 10-foot buffer under the multiple buffer provision. The requested landscaping variations can only be granted through the ordinance approving the planned commercial district under section 424097. Accordingly, a motion to recommend approval of the rezoning should include the commission's determination on each of the two requested variations. In regard to the rezoning, staff would recommend that the permitted and conditional uses be limited to those in the C3 district under section 4282 and 4283, or 42282 and 42283, and that the C3 use limitations under section 42286 apply, including the requirement that all business, service, storage, and display of goods be conducted within a completely enclosed building. Staff recommends approval of the requested zoning map amendment from C3 Shopping Center to Planned Service Commercial, subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, the permitted and conditional uses shall be limited to those uses listed in the C3 district under section 42282 and 42283, except that parking garages and lots shall be a permitted use. This condition comes from the applicant is proposing to develop some retail and commercial uses. Oftentimes, these uses have a need for excess parking, and so the applicant has expressed a request to have parking garages and more specifically parking lots be a permitted use to allow potentially that use to be located on one of the lots to provide parking for some of the commercial development in the subdivision. Condition 2, the C3 district use limitations under 42286 shall apply. 3, all signage shall be subject to the C3 district sign regulations under section 42521, except that an advertising or off-premise sign shall be permitted on Reserve C and be limited to providing signage only for businesses located on lots 3, 5, and 8 of the replat of the 9 South Edition. Condition 4, 6-foot site obscuring screening consistent with section 42286 shall be provided along all lot lines abutting a residential district. 5, exterior lighting fixtures shall be shaded so that no direct light is cast upon any property located in a residential district and so that no glare is visible to any traffic on any public street in accordance with section 42286. 6, a site development plan for each lot shall be submitted and approved by the Planning Commission prior to issuance of a building permit for that lot in accordance with section 4240918. 7, all site development plans for lots 1 through 8 shall include landscaping in compliance with C3 district regulations, section 4265 in the planned commercial district sign regulations under chapter 42, article 4, division 2. And 8, development of lots 1 through 8 shall conform to the approved site development plans. Commissioners, that concludes staff's presentation, and we are available to answer any questions you might have, and the applicant is on Zoom.
Thank you, Gage. You might want to get a drink of water.
If you don't mind.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry to barge in.
Yes. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mr.
but just to not belabor a point, Gage, can you please redo your number one of the staff recommendation when we're talking about parking garages being a permitted use? I'm wondering if that's left over, or Dan, also on the Zoom call is Dan Unruh, one of the partners of the development, and I'm confused as to what that language was, and I didn't want to get hung up on it. But can you please explain where that comes from? Because I'm not clear. Dan,
I'll
are
answer
you?
that for you, Jeff. This is Dustin Michelson. The language about the parking lots and garages was to leave that option open to however Lot 8 is developed. So C5 district allows parking lots and garages as a permitted use. So to leave that option open in the future to using it as a standalone lot, if that were the way you want to develop it, that's why we recommend to Staff's recommendation is to keep the bulk regulations and use limitations consistent with C3, the way that it was intended before, but with that parking lot and garages use from the C5 to be allowed in case you ever want to use Lot 8 that way, just to leave that option open. It's not to necessarily say that it's not meant to say that you will do that with Lot 8. It was just to leave that option open. But
Well, bravo to staff.
So-
You're outthinking us. So thank you for that. I just, when I saw it, I wasn't exactly sure. We hadn't covered that, and I wasn't exactly sure where that was coming from. So with that, we'll listen to you.
I want to make one more comment real quick to the commission. Just to clarify here, I noticed there's some language missing from the alternatives that I want to make clear. Since this is a rezoning, you are making a recommendation on approval to the Board of Commissioners. So you're making a recommendation to the City Commission. With this change to plan commercial, there are a few different ways that you can go about planned commercial. And what the applicants here are requesting is to have deferred site plans. That's one of the ways that you can go about rezoning to planned commercial, with the option to defer the site plan approval to a later time when each lot is developed on a lot-by-lot basis. So effectively today you're reviewing the validity of the proposed rezoning, but what is coming out of it, you aren't approving the rezoning, you are making a recommendation to the City Commission. So that will go to the City Commission next, either assuming that it's an approval or an affirmative recommendation, that will go to the City Commission for consideration, and there will be an ordinance written for that to outline everything that's in this. And if you have any questions on that, I can kind of clarify it.
Okay, thank you, Justin. All right, commissioners, I open it up for questions of staff first. Dan, do you have some questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. You said that the vegetation requirements are met through lots 2, 4, and 6, and it meets regulation.
So the applicant is requesting the landscaping variations specifically for lots 3, 5, and 8 of the 9 South subdivision. So lots 2, 4, and then 6 and 7, they are proposing to install the landscaping as required per the landscaping regulations. So that comment is to say, and this, the applicant outlines it as part of their request narrative, is that they are requesting the landscaping variations for the back lots or the lots along the access road, but they are proposing to do the full landscaping in those front 4 lots. So Dustin has it pulled up on the screen so you can see, but the lots that front on Marketplace, they are proposing to have the landscaping as required in the code. The requested variations are for the back lots, lots 8, which is at the bottom of your screen, lot 5, and then lot 3, which is directly south of the pond and north of lot 5. Does that help answer your question?
It helps. If we make the recommendation that, because I don't see it drawn in here, and it hasn't been approved, and it hasn't been required yet for the front lots. So I'm wondering, what I'm worried about is if we approve this, does it get done?
So in the plan commercial process, when you're doing deferred site plan approval, that each lot will have to come back to the Planning Commission for approval of a site development plan, which will be the approved site plan. So everything has to be developed according to the site plan that you approve at that time. It's just that on some of these multi-tenant property or developments, they don't know who's going to go in where. Sure. And so they're not building out the entire shopping center at this time. That's going to be on a lot by lot basis. And so each of those plans, so
each lot will come up by itself.
You're concerned we'll have a point where you guys get to address it and review that. But at this time, it's bare ground. It's 8 lots. And so what this is doing is setting up the regulations that would apply when someone is going to develop that lot. Does that help explain?
That helps. I don't know if we can pose a question to
So-
the applicant.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, well, I'm just wondering what the likelihood of that, the vegetation being a hardship and a restriction at a later date on the front lots. Is that,
That's probably best for the applicant to answer, but and I don't want to overspeak for Jeff. He's welcome to chime in when you guys get to him on this. But the lots 3, 5, and 8, since they are back off of the street and they have a required buffer on the rear, on the east side, and then they would have front yard landscaping in the front. What I believe their rationale here is that you essentially have 2 rows of front yard landscaping that gets applied there, and so that it ends up affecting building size down the road. And so they were leaving the front yard landscaping along Marketplace just as it would normally be by the zoning regulations. Now, as to whether that becomes a problem for any individual lot developer, there's no way for us to really anticipate that.
Okay, I still want to continue with questions of staff at this time. Go ahead.
Okay, so this building, is it going to take up lots 3, 5, and 8, the 227 feet building?
So
That is just a concept drawing. That's not a proposed drawing,
Okay.
a building at this time. We have no, we
But,
don't.
but in general, they're planning to use those 3 lots for a building of some kind, probably with tenants in there. Is that on each side? Is that
I believe
correct?
that's the plan, but that's probably a better question to clarify, just to see where the applicant's at, because I know that there's probably a lot of movement trying to see who wants to take these lots. So I'll leave that to them.
Commissioner Alt, to clarify that this exhibit is an example. This is only lot 5. So I think your question, as it related to, is it lots 3, 5, and 8? The exhibit that was provided, and as Dustin indicated, it's an example of potential development. It's an example of potential development only on lot 5. They did not provide a example of all 3 lots. So,
Okay,
if that answers your.
all right, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions of staff?
Dustin or Gage, either one. So if we pass this and it goes to the commission and it's turned into an ordinance, then the developer has to go by what that ordinance says, correct? I mean, they wouldn't be able, or I guess they could come back to us when we did an individual site plan and ask for something of a variance to that, but we would have to go back and change the ordinance then, correct?
Correct. So when the site development plan comes to you for review, you would be treating that ordinance as the standards to which you're applying, that you're reviewing that site development plan, which incorporate the ordinance will say that for anything not listed, that it uses the C3 or the C5, regulation. So that becomes like the standard that you're reviewing to, which brings in the other zoning regulations that aren't really addressed in that ordinance. So that does become the standard. For a variation, this is the time when they're trying to establish what variations from those zoning regulations there are. Now, if in the future they see a need for another variation, it would be coming back to amend the planned commercial zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other PC5 zoned areas, I guess, within the vicinity or area?
Here, you wanna? Yep, he's already on it. So we'll bring up the GIS map. There are some more or less adjacent to this.
And are they, I guess probably applicant question, never mind.
So this is the current zoning map of the area. The property is currently zoned C3, and again, it's being proposed to be PC5. Across the street on the west side of 9th Street, you have primarily all C5 zoning. So this rezoning to PC5 would be an extension of the C5 zoning that you see on the west side of 9th Street. And being a planned development, it would be coherent with the surrounding planning commercial that you have to the south. So to the south, you have PC3 zoning, and to the west, you have C5 zoning.
Okay. Is the sign regulations for PC5 where they could have taller signs or a larger amount of signage?
You could potentially have taller signs. Larger amount is unlikely because both the C3 and C4 district allow 4 square feet of sign area per lineal foot of building frontage. So the amount of signage is probably going to be the same whether it's C3 or C5, but you could potentially have taller signs. Okay. The biggest thing here is that you could have an off-premise sign, and what they're wanting to do is have a shared sign that has all the different tenants on it, similar to what we have at like a Mid-State Plaza or something like that, where there's multiple tenants on a single sign out front that would advertise and notify people that those businesses are in this development. And so in the C3 district, you can't have signs that identify or advertise businesses that are on a different property. And because the properties to the back, on lots 3, 5, and 8, would not have frontage or be on a different lot, they couldn't do that in the C3 district, which is why they're proposing PC5, so they can have that sign.
When you have a large building with multiple units in them or whatever, what dictates the amount of frontage per business or whatever? I guess is that if one business takes up like half of it and then you have like 2 other businesses, does that one business then have a larger majority of that signage?
So the way we typically administered that is if you have a building that's multiple tenants, like a strip building of some kind, we allocate a total sum of sign area that's allowed for that entire building. Okay. And then as signs come on board, it uses that total summation until you get to the end of it, and then you don't have any more. And so what we do is we rely on the landlord to kind of help control and divvy up what each tenant gets in terms of sign area. Now, with us allowing 4 square feet per lineal foot of building frontage, that's very, very rarely a problem. So it doesn't really become an issue, but that is how we administer that.
Okay.
All right, any other questions of staff? All right, I would open it up for the applicant to address the questions that have been brought forth.
Thank you, Chair Waters and Commission. Chairman Waters, it's good to see you there this afternoon. We enjoyed a wonderful day yesterday up on the 3rd floor in jury duty selection. Yeah. So I'm glad to see you're able to be there this afternoon. Thank you all for your time and consideration of this application. It's pretty simple for us, and we worked with staff closely to get to this point to present this application to you, and followed largely their recommendations to get to a goal. The signage and the straight C3 to PC5 is just as staff has said. It is nothing more than us needing or requesting the ability to put a sign out on Marketplace to identify the proposed retail center in the rear. So it is nothing more than that. And the fact of the matter is, it gives you all, through going from a straight C3 zoning, which would be simply to apply for the permit and go and never come before your party, to you get site plan approval as we go forward. But it was a step that we had to do as developers in order to get some signage recognition for a proposed retail center in the rear. As the market has talked to us, I think the date that sticks out certainly to Dan and I as owners of the development is 2018. And here we are in front of you 8 years later asking, and we do have a great deal of velocity in the development. The question has now become, as we've worked with staff on how this is going to build out, is what can we accomplish and what can't we? And so the bigger question in our mind is, I mean, we've got the replat done. The signage piece going to PC5 seems to make a great deal of sense. It's all about this landscape requirement in the rear lots and how we have to adhere to that, because it essentially makes the rear part of that property after, and this was all well before you guys' time, I think most all of you, we were forced to put that frontage road in. We argued to not have to do that and circulate internally and be able to reserve that depth for the future development of this lot as a whole when purchased. But we had to connect that road, which bad idea then, bad idea when we had to do it, and arguably a bad idea today, but here we are. And the exhibits that we sent you were to illustrate that the strict adherence to the landscape code shows you that the only amount of room that we have left is and I'm sorry, I'm now in Oklahoma at a funeral, but it becomes an unbuildable lot if we have front yard and rear yard landscape requirements, and we lose enough parking that we as developers, through the strict adherence of the code, become lost on what we can do with those rear lots. Pardon me. So, Commissioner McFadden, you will have coming before you as a result of these actions today, planning oversight for those front lots. Now, as we as developers are making it very clear of what those regulations are and what the requirements are going to be, we're not asking for relief from anything up front. I use the Mid-State or the Central Mall as an example, in that all those front pads have all that front yard landscaping requirement. We're not asking for relief from that, but the way the staff was having to enforce the code without your action today was to make us have 2 front yard landscape buffers. Plus, and this is something that we need to address as a community. It's not 9 South development specific, but it's something that we need to really look at as throughout our community. It is counterintuitive to think that we have to put in 15-foot rear yard bumper or buffer of plantings because we're up against the residential, and then screen those plantings from the residential. It makes no sense. It is our code. Staff's not guilty here. It's just we need to rectify this. But reality is everybody's so busy dealing with other things that Lauren and I have talked about it. She's like, bring an application and we can address it. But there's just us and staff are too busy to get to that point. If you recall, we just went through all that with sidewalks out on Bex. But moral of the story is, what we're trying to define in this application is what would the commission recommend to us or allow us to do from a landscaping relief perspective in the development overall. We're not asking for front yard relief. We're just asking for, don't make it redundant, and then don't make us have 15 foot in the rear that we then in turn have to screen from the residential neighbors. It's not that we're not empathetic at all, and our concern as developers is we have no intention of going and building a 6-foot privacy fence and putting a curb up against it. But that 15 feet, and again, what that exhibit was meant to illustrate to you is, you make us put a privacy fence 15 feet, how much building can we get in there? And those exhibits were intended to illustrate to you that it becomes unbuildable back there if we can't get some relief from the strict application of the code. So I think that's the gist of our request. We lose, if you look at those exhibits closely, we lose the entire row of parking and the parking in the rear and at some point, and we actively have people I spoke to today that are interested in going in that strip center in the rear, and we've got everybody on hold because we need to get through this process, which we very much appreciate your time, and I would like to stand for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mays. Mr. McFadden, did your question get answered?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then Mr. Alt, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions of the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I would now open it up to members of the public in our audience today. If they have any comments or concerns they'd like to address, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Glenn Boyd, live at 2824 Highland. It's at the south end of Pumpkin Patch. And I definitely have an issue with his characterization of no green relief, because otherwise what you're asking us is to basically put a parking lot right against our property line. That has to do, the green relief helps with heat relief during the summer, because concrete is nothing but a heat sink. It also has to do with sound. And I understand you're talking about doing the green and then doing the privacy fence. And you have stated that there's privacy fences all along that stretch. I'm sorry, a third of it properties don't have privacy fences. A third of them have very rickety fences. 2 of them have adequate fences. But what you're wanting to do, and they're shallow lots. The city, when they zoned that residential and followed the transmission lines and stuff like that, they made them shallow lots. So when you talk about putting concrete right up against our property, you're looking at 25 foot to the houses, and that is a burden on us. The noise, I was at your meeting 2017, and you said you'd take care of us, go look at Dillon's on Ohio Street, that the C13 back landscaping would apply. Now what you're asking us to do is basically put a parking lot right to our property line. And it's like, and I do understand back in 2017, I was against them extending the front Marketplace Road, because I knew it was going to impact us eventually. I was for where they would just let you plat it right off 9th Street. So because I knew there would be consequences of extending that frontage road. But now you're asking us to bite the bullet for that decision, and you're basically you're asking for more square footage. It's not about parking, because the parking, and I went to your staff, and they were great. But they gave me information that did not come out in a flyer. You're asking for basically 6 more feet on that back lot for the store. Your parking and everything else is still the same. You didn't change any of that. So basically you're asking for more square footage in the building itself. I have no issue with the front side. I have no issue with the signage, but I definitely have an issue with putting a parking lot right against my property. And if people could read, I had to come to Planning Commission, your staff, to explain to me what we're talking about. Most people don't have the time to do that. That's the only reason you had 2 people. By
Mr. Boyd.
just what the flyer, the information we got sent out, you can't read it. You don't know what you're asking for. You say you want full relief
Chair
from
Waters.
the rear landscaping.
We
Didn't even know what that meant. I had to come to the staff to have it shown to me, and they gave me Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2 of 5.
Hey,
Mr. Boyd,
I-
excuse me,
I
we
think
need to
it'd be-
limit our comments to say 3 minutes, so.
I think it would be
Minutes.
beneficial to clarify that point that
Oh,
you just
okay.
mentioned, though. And I would like Mr. Boyd to expand on that a bit about the information provided, because to our knowledge, it was only what was in the application, what was submitted by the applicant, and what went into the staff report. I just wanted him to have a chance to clarify that, to make sure that that's on the record here. I believe he might be talking about the difference between what was in the property owner letter that got sent out and what's in the full application. So I'm gonna let him expand on
Okay,
that, but you
that's
know.
fine.
This is what property owners had to go off of. Can I bring this up and show you?
That's the plat. That's part of the packet.
Yeah, we have that. We have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell me exactly what it says?
I think Mr. Boyd.
Glasses, I used 3-power glasses, and I couldn't read it. I had to use a magnifying glass to actually read what it says. That's the reason I'm one of the only ones here about this.
We had the
I had to
benefit
go to your,
benefit of getting it on a PDF, and we could
Right.
read it. Dustin, was that available to them, though, in PDF form as well?
As far as during that meeting, I don't know. It would be available. So to explain, we had a meeting with Mr. Boyd, which is part of the normal process. Anybody who receives a letter, gets a notification letter, can come in to meet with staff to see what's in the application. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified, that to our knowledge, there was nothing that wasn't presented to the board that it may have not been in the letter, the public notice or the property owner notice, because those typically go out with a vicinity map and a site plan or whatever is submitted, but not always the full application packet, every document in there. So just wanted to make sure that that point was clear and make sure that that's
Okay.
consistent with what you received.
They got you the information that you needed, right?
Right.
Okay.
okay.
Good.
But I was appealing to you guys, so it's a difference point. But I've only got 3 minutes. I'm over time.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr.
But-
Boyd.
I do remember talking to you back in 2017.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I recall.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience that has any comments? Okay. Seeing none. Dustin, is there anyone
Madam
on?
Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair, could I
Yes.
interject for one quick second,
Yes.
please?
Go
Just to
ahead.
answer Mr. Board, it may be to the benefit of the commission. We are more than happy for the burden of that 6-foot fence to fall on our development as we develop. I mean, we have full expectations of putting that fence across there, right? If that isn't conveyed, or maybe it's not, we're happy to carry the burden of making that fence be consistent all the way across the entire back of the development.
It's the setback is even the more important part. Have at least some,
I don't know that he can hear.
between 5 to 15, some number in there that we can, homeowners can read.
Mr. Boyd.
Mr. Boyd?
If you want to make more comments, if you would just step back up to the microphone, please, because it needs to go on the record. And so,
Okay.
Okay.
So Jeff can hear you.
I know the homeowners need some relief from the total relief that you're asking for. We don't think we should have to bear the total burden of concrete right up against our property when the zoning calls for 15 foot of green. That's, I don't think that we should be the one that has to bear that burden.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. All right. Dustin, is there anyone online that would have any comments or care to speak?
it appears that everybody online is related to, is here for one of the cases that are before you. So I don't see anybody else online that is looking to speak or anything.
Okay, thank you.
So.
All right, commissioners, if there's no other questions of staff or the applicant, I open it up for discussion.
I'd like a little clarification. I know there's a utility easement. If I'm looking at this map correctly, there's a utility easement on that side in between the commercial and residential properties?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, so when we're talking about plantings or a fence, are they going to be able to fence on that easement, or is it going to be?
They would be able to put a fence there with a couple conditions. They can't typically go. You can't put a structure in an easement. Structures are not allowed. Fences are allowed at your own risk. This is in utility easements. Now this, let me just make sure this is just a utility easement. In drainage easements, they're more limited. You have to get city engineer approval. You can put a fence in a utility easement at your own risk. You can plant shrubs and trees and stuff, but if they have to get in and do work, that's why it's at the property owner's risk. Now I will add an additional point for you to consider is that depending how easements are used or what's existing in them, certain plantings, trees and stuff can start to cause issues with lines that are underground. But as far as the fence being up on top, that's just an at your own risk thing. If they need to go in and do work, they will pull the fence down if they need to get in there.
So the question then goes to Mr. Mays, is that fence going to be in that easement or is it going to be on your side?
Well, I mean, we would anticipate it on the property line, and to Dustin's comment or Ms. we would anticipate, and if they have to, I mean, that's just the way the game's played. We all have that at our houses in our rear yard. If you've got any utility back there, if they got to take the fence down, they got to take the fence down. You got to put it back up. So we would anticipate it on the property line, and again at the developer's cost, if that needs to be a condition of your action.
Now, just clarification. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is the isn't the easement like 12 to 15 feet?
20 feet.
It's
20 feet?
20 feet wide.
So they're not going to put the parking lot on the easement, right?
There's no prohibition against putting parking over an easement.
Will there be concrete on the easement?
Yeah. No, I mean, it would be paving. I don't know if they would be using asphalt or concrete, but that's actually not that uncommon in a lot of these commercial developments. There's easements running through the middle of parking lots.
Well, Mr. Boyd, I'm just trying to clarify Mr. Boyd's comment about the parking going right up to his property line.
Basically, the answer is that they could put paving over the easement. Yeah.
And then the fence would be on the east side of their property line.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't. The expectation would be that the fence, which is related to this development, would fall within the property lines of the 9 South, the replatted 9 South edition. So if they were to go put a fence outside of these lots within the 9 South edition, then that would be putting a fence on someone else's property. So that would either be a problem, it could be an issue, or it could just be a matter of getting permission. But the expectation that we're working with is that any site screening, landscaping requirements, screening requirements, they would occur on the property.
But on the property line is on the property, correct?
It would be, I'm sure that it would fall within the property line to be on the property. I mean,
Might be an inch over, but
Right.
I'm not trying to be picky here. I'm just trying to understand the concept of the parking, the concrete right up against the land or the homeowner's property. I'm trying to determine if that's actually going to happen or if there's going to be some.
if we gave relief from it, that would be a possibility.
And again, keep in mind that with this having deferred site plan approval, you would get to see the site development plan that's being proposed for each lot. And so the expectation on that site development plan is that it includes all landscaping and screening and everything. So you would have a chance to review that and see that screening is being provided for each of those lots before it's developed as part of that review.
Dustin, a particular lot, I mean, they could say, we want to put, 20-foot width of landscaping in there for our lot in this 20-foot. If it's not
even
paved.
if you gave them the variation, they could still choose to do landscaping. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, it definitely wouldn't prohibit someone from doing that.
Okay.
It's hard for me to speak to because that's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff built into that that's really the developer's part of it.
It seems to me that the homeowners, when they bought those places and developed them, that they had a reasonable expectation that there would be a fence and some screening there. And I totally understand things from Jeff Mays's point and the developer's point as well. It seems like we have some negotiation to do here. I'm going to throw an idea out there and maybe see what you guys think and what Jeff thinks. What if we hit some kind of compromise in the middle, let's say 8 feet, and that had to be a green space that had to have some kind of shrubs that would help mitigate the noise and then also the heat in that.
Oh, go ahead. Mr. Boyd, could you come up to the podium? I want to clarify, Pat's, the 8 feet from the property line.
From the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Boyd.
Preferably, I would have had it 10 foot.
Okay.
Because we're looking at 15 to 5. Yeah, any relief would help. Higher screening would help. It's hard to really, and I understand the point about privacy fence, and then you have the green, but the greenery helps from heat. So, yes, I mean, I understand. I'm not sitting here thinking we're going to get the 15 feet of greenery. I'm not that naive. So any relief would definitely help. A higher screening would help, being that they're going to be driving to the back of the lot, swinging around. Because when it was a C3, when you zoned it before, there was not going to be any back parking. So higher screening would help. And more than, but I do realize that we're going to have to compromise because, but.
So if you had the 10 feet and a fence and no greenery, would that get you?
No.
No, you want the greenery as well as the fence?
You have to have some relief from the concrete. Even if you put a 8-foot barrier up there and you run concrete to it and you have shallow backyards, you definitely are impacted. Utility-wise, enjoyment in your backyard-wise, especially when you have traffic that's going to be coming through and turning into. So, you know, it's not like it's just going to come in from the south or it's coming from the west, making a U-turn to park. So we're going to be dealing with traffic lights, car lights, things like that. So the screening would be to help that. The extra greenery would help with the utilities, with the heat aspect of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyd. All right, commissioners, I continue with discussion.
I'm thinking along the same lines. If you reduce that area, do you reduce the amount of vegetation you put in there, or do you squish the same amount of vegetation requirements of X amount of plants per 50 feet? Or
Well, that would be up to the commission to make a decision on that. If you'd like to look at a different solution. So with variations, you do have the ability to approve a lesser variation, meaning you could go with something in between what the requirement is and what the applicant's requesting. That's just a part of doing the variations. You do have the ability to say that we're not going to approve. That if you recognize it, the full regulations you feel is too much, and you feel that going the other way is too much, you can land on something in the middle, and you do have the ability to kind of determine that.
I'm also wondering if there's a regulation to keep the vegetation alive. I mean,
We've had that before.
With approved landscaping, that is the expectation, is that it remains in good condition and it's alive.
Right.
Yes. It becomes an approved site plan by each lot, so the expectation is that required landscaping does stay alive.
okay.
Jeff, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair. So as I indicated earlier, it would not be our intention to build a 6-foot fence and put a curb up against it and in developing this. So we have no reservation relative to some level of a buffer. And again, being empathetic to our neighbors that worked with us back in 18 or 17 and 18 when we were platting this. I personally, if I were to close my, and I've got partners, and one of which is here today with us, but if I were to close my eyes, I would like to see a requirement so we can take action and start working towards development of this project rather than continuing to wonder what it's going to be. If we could get a 5-foot, we're going to put the fence in, we're going to get a 5-foot buffer, and we need to put columnar type trees along that property line. I heard one comment about a 10-foot fence. Well, 10-foot fence has become difficult to build and maintain, and certainly within unless we're going to talk about building block walls, and then 5 foot's not going to do it to make it stand up because it's going to fall over. I mean, just the logistics of what you actually see in building those, having built them. But wanting to be responsible and good neighbors like we did when we bought this and started this process, we have no issue if staff could, if the commission could find a way to and feel like we are working with the neighbors, which we sincerely want to do. And if it was we have the obligation to put in the rear yard, we have the obligation to put the fence up and to have a 5-foot buffer in which we could work with the city staff and the forester on what trees appropriate in a 5-foot planting area that's not going to outgrow it. It's not going to go and can get tall and get above that fence. I think we're accomplishing everyone's goals. Our whole thing as developers, as we talk to these retailers about coming to Salina, is what we need to know from your action and the subsequent action of the city commission is what can and can't we do? Because we can't answer the basic question of what can you build us and when can you build it for us until we get through this process. So, and what we're trying to do is maintain the most amount of flexibility, but it could be that is 8 feet back there. I would rather have more room in the front sidewalk and have columnar trees in the back that cover up those houses that never see anything, and have a wider sidewalk that we can put some really cool planters in to be a nice frontage and to offset the front yard landscape as you walk into this retail center. I would rather have that for us as developers, that type of flexibility, than to sit here and argue over 2 feet in the rear yard right now. I mean, we would be agreeable and it would work for us. If you could, we will, at our cost, we will put the privacy fence in for all those lots across the back. Give us a 5-yard rear yard landscape buffer that we have the requirement to put in a columnar type tree.
5 foot.
I know that I believe, and staff help me here, but I think it calls for cedars that have a tendency to get wide and big and are going to outgrow that 5-foot area versus that. I mean, I know we have them because they planted them on some of our properties, or the city has a slender, tall tree that could screen. We wouldn't anticipate any parking we wouldn't anticipate any parking towards the east, towards them. That would be, right now, the site plan that we're looking at the most based upon your all's action is staff parking that would be facing into the building. So that would be a fence, 5 yards of a columnar type tree, a driveway, and parking that faces the building. And I'll also,
I think you mean 5 feet, not 5 yards.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 5 feet. Yes, thank you, Dan. 5 feet. We're back to 15 feet. Good point.
So to answer just
the other thing that I'd like to point out that I do think is important, and I know staff's very, very aware of it as we submit plans, is all of our lighting will be shaded not to cast on our neighbors whatsoever. So really, it's just, again, it's the idiocy of saying you've got the buffer and then you've got the screen. And all we're asking for is some relief of that. And if you would grant us 5 feet and the privacy fence, we can, and if you want to write in a columnar style tree, we can do that. We just need to get to a place where we can understand what we can and can't build so we can go to work trying to build it.
Okay.
Is Mrs. Paul's representative here?
Just by me.
Oh, okay, okay.
No. He, Mr. Excuse me.
Mecklin.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Hall. Yeah, Mr. Mecklin indicated that he did come in to speak with staff once he received the property owner. He indicated he would not be able to be here at the public hearing, but his comments were highlighted in the.
So you've heard what Mr. May's proposal is, a 5-foot buffer with some planted columnar trees and building a privacy fence the full length of that thing. Do you think that would get you where you need to be?
Well, I guess it comes back to what my options are, right? I would say an 8-foot privacy fence with palmer trees would be more beneficial just because of the coming back driving. I don't think he's going to come off the 5.5 foot setback. I was hoping to leave here that we had agreed on a 10-foot setback on the green. So I still would rather have the 10-foot. And I know all my neighbors, even though they can't be here because they're working in that, they will realize the impact of having a 5-foot, just a 5-foot setback. We all will. I do agree that having trees like you're talking about is definitely a beneficial thing to do everywhere. Because it helps screening. It also helps with the heat reduction. So I'm definitely not opposed to that. I was hoping for more of a green space between, but that's what's going to be up to you guys. But
And
we
you
are
understand
concerned.
the point about the 8-foot fence versus the 6-foot fence, right? I mean, you have 6-foot fences that are there that are in disrepair right now,
and
right?
what you run into is being that within a 6-foot fence, fine if you don't have a lot of traffic comes back. But if you're going to have a lot of traffic, you take Sonic. They have an 8-foot fence. That is, and even the Mexican place next to it, they have 8-foot fences that protects the lighting from the, vehicle lighting coming around. And we're going to have that with this, because before there wasn't going to be any buildings in the back per se, but there's going to be possible restaurants, possible drive-throughs, my understanding. So we'll have to deal with that type of lighting, car lighting, when it comes to mixed use and comes into the parking lot. So that's the reason the 8-foot fence would be better than the 6-foot fence, even with the tree, the trees would be great, no matter what. The trees would be great. So the fence height would help also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyd.
And, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The columnar trees that he's talking about, and I saw an illustration of those on the screen a moment ago, are those viable for a 5-foot section, or
That's
is,
what's going to be tricky about it.
Yeah.
So tailored junipers can grow from 15 to 25 feet in height. So they're very tall, they're very linear, and their spread, because they're very columnar, is generally 3 to 5 feet, the total width across. So that would be about the only variety that comes to my mind that might work. And even then, I don't know enough about that to say for certain that would work there. But that is the variety of juniper that I know does very well with our climate zone and soil type, has a really tight columnar shape to it, so that way it might give it a chance, and it also grows tall. But that's a pretty layperson's opinion on it, just from experience with working with landscapers on landscape plans, and not being an actual expert on it.
There are a few other columnar types that might work as well. I think there's a couple cypress.
But that's
have-
something that staff and the developers can work together to get a decent.
Sure. There are
tree,
columnar shaped trees that will work in landscape islands like that in kind of narrow strips. And it's a matter of finding what works for this climate zone. And if if there's something that's not on our list, and we have city forester and landscape plans, get a look from him as well for trees. And so
And-
we have the ability to go through that.
Commissioners, bear in mind that this site plan comes before you again before approval anyway. All we're asking, I mean, we can't take next steps until we can get some defined action
Right.
by you and the commission. And so
Okay.
if we can't come before you and illustrate a landscape plan that says that we can fit it in 5 feet, you still get another bite of that site plan out. We're just trying to understand what we have to design within. And if we've got an extra 2 feet and it works better for us as opposed to putting it up, I mean, we're trying to build the best product we can for the community and for our tenants. And so we're just trying to get as much flexibility as possible, be empathetic to our neighbors, but we've got to have something defined, because what we do know is under the strict application of the zoning ordinance, we can't develop back there. So really what we need is just, I mean, we would like to ask for, as stated, and I will be done talking to you all and allow you to take action, but what we're asking for is a 5-foot buffer in the rear, relief from the front yard, bearing in mind that we still have our landscape islands in that parking lot, because we'll be over 50 stalls, so we'll still have trees and landscape islands in the parking lot up front. We would like to have the flexibility to make that sidewalk wider so that we can do more up front for a more aesthetic, appealing entrance to our retail center. But that would be our request, is that we would ask for the privacy fence to be on us and a 5-foot rear landscape buffer. And we will be before you again for a site plan approval before we can build it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mays.
sorry.
Commissioners, I'd like to close.
Can I address Mr. Mays one more time?
This will be the last comment before we make a
I'll
motion.
keep it under 3 minutes, I
Okay,
promise.
go.
So Jeff, to sum up here, we've been on this for an hour and a half now. Let me just ask you one question. Mr. Boyd made the comment about the 8-foot fence. To help get this thing done, would you go for an 8-foot fence and your 5-foot buffer and no front yard setback in the back 3 lots?
The only reason I question this, Commissioner, is I've never built an 8-foot privacy fence, and I don't know what that practically does for you. If the concern is light, as a car comes around one spot behind that center before it's going north and south, and there is no light transfer into the backyards. I don't know what 8-foot does for you that 6-foot doesn't, and I just don't know what exactly that looks like. So for us to agree to that today would be difficult. I don't understand. I mean, I get if I can get a little. I mean, again, our neighbors to the east. I mean, if 8, why not 10? And if 10, why not 12? So I get trying to get all I can get if I were the neighbors. I think that practically speaking, I don't know what 8 does that 6 doesn't, and I would be worried about wind, maintenance. I mean, all of the things that come to with owning stuff, something like that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioners, let's make a motion.
I think if we're trying to compromise, I think 8-foot setback, 6-foot fence, columnar trees. I think that gets him a little bit of space, gets a normal fence so it's not wonky in the future, gives enough space for the trees, and I would do full grant relief on the front yard. Is where I'm at.
8-foot setback or 5?
I'll do 8
You do 8?
because to give him a little bit more.
Sure.
Okay, and Justin, to clarify, on page 28, the other, there's 8 noted there from the staff. Subject to the following conditions, these 8, I'm just clarifying those.
Chair Waters, can I clarify
Yes.
something real fast?
Yes.
When you speak about the setback, do you mean landscape buffer? I just want to be real clear on that, because setback is typically a building setback or a setback to a structure, and so
from the property line.
Sure.
8 foot from the property
You're
line.
talking about the landscaping
But
buffer?
Yeah,
You're talking about the
sorry.
width of the landscape buffer,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure that that word
Right.
is used correctly, because the setback could kind of throw things off, if that was.
And yes, with the 8, trying to make sure all that complies with each other that I've said, so.
I really think 8 foot's going to be a little too much. A 6 foot fence, I think is going to be fine, especially with the lighting that's going on there. I wrote down 6 foot buffer. I know he's talking about 5 foot. We're going to compromise. We're going to get everybody mad at us. Both sides are going to be upset, whatever we come up with. But 8 feet just seems like a lot of buffer when we can get columnar trees that are going to stay within a 5 to 6 foot radius.
Okay.
That was my thinking behind it anyway.
That's fine.
I'd agree
I'll
that
concede the
I'd
6.
rather see 6 foot than 8.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, is this a motion?
No,
Did we have a
just
motion on the
discussion.
table? Okay, okay. So did you just make a
Correct.
motion?
Were you just discussing?
No,
I was just discussing.
I'm just discussing.
Sure.
To make sure we're all
All right.
on the same page.
Does
before
anyone
we-
want to make a motion?
Do it.
Madam Chair, I appreciate all the input that's been put in here from both sides, and again, we're trying to take into account both sides, trying to help and make this work. There are 8 conditions that are listed on my page 28 here, and I would say or make a motion that we send this to the City Commission for approval of this with a 6 foot landscape buffer, and that to keep with the 6 foot privacy screening that is already there. Is that the wording that needs to be in it?
With columnar trees or?
And with the columnar trees, and of course that's going to be in that landscaping that's already approved, right, or required?
I thought that was different.
At a later date.
That'll be approved at a later date.
Yeah.
That part.
In a 6 foot fence.
A 6 foot fence
Yeah.
with a
Right.
6 foot landscaping with the columnar tree requirement.
And those columnar trees are evergreen trees or just columnar trees?
Columnar, and I'll leave it to staff to work that out with the developer.
And I would second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded with the 8 conditions and then the 6 foot landscape buffer, the 6 foot high fence. All those in favor say aye.
Was that
Yep.
with the front yard?
The front yard
Oh,
is,
Yeah,
It's
so
in there.
a decision, would the decision be to grant the full variation for the front yard landscaping?
yes, yes.
That was,
I think we're
that was
clarifying.
my intent on my,
I apologize. I thought that was inside the 8 conditions, but yes, the front yard, full.
Elimination.
So just to make sure that everybody's clear, we might have to have you do it.
Yes.
the motion
Okay.
again. Is that okay? Full relief from the front yard landscaping, 6 foot wide landscape buffer.
The rear.
In the rear, on the east side, the front yard landscaping is a requirement of the rear yard landscape buffer. You're saying 6 foot,
Mm-hmm.
correct? With a 6 foot tall fence? Is that?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is that how everybody
And
understood it?
trees.
And column.
And a requirement that it contain columnar trees.
Yes. And a second.
You second it.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you, staff and commission.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, 1 minute. 1 minute, Mr. Boyd.
Okay, a third of our properties are not fenced at all. Are you going to be responsible for fencing that, or is that going to fall on the homeowners?
It's on them.
On the homeowners?
Not on the.
The developer's
said
gonna
that
have
they
to put
would-
it
Going
up.
to be on
They would be fencing their
Dr.
property.
Mays? Mr. Mays, or am I going to have to shell out for a 6 foot, 154 foot fence?
Mr. Boyd.
Mr. Boyd, could Dustin,
To give you an explanation of how this would work, the developers would have a requirement to have a 6 foot fence. They would have to fence their property to screen it from yours. So along the east property line, that would have they would be in, the requirement is for them to install a 6 foot fence. So does that answer your question?
okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to the next application, which is 3.2, filed by Charles Renz.
Yeah, that was in the.
Okay, I will be presenting this item, so give me a moment to get the presentation pulled up.
Painful.
Okay.
We'll go back to jury.
So this particular application has two items tied to it. So it is an application for an amended preliminary PDD filed by Charles Renz on behalf of SRH Advisors, and they're requesting a preliminary development plan approval. So that's the first item. And then also a recommendation for an amended plan development district ordinance that would go before the city commission. And the reason for that is the property is part of the Wilbur PDD development over on Crawford, a little bit to the east of Marymount and Crawford. So this is the aerial photo. If you'll remember, a few years ago we had a Dollar Tree that was going in at this site, and we did a review there as well. In this case, the applicant is requesting, just like with the last application, some variations to the regulations, and that's why they are amending the PDD with a new preliminary development plan versus just a new final development plan. So the surrounding area, the properties to the north are R1 single family. The properties to the east is the Brookdale Senior Living Nursing Home, and then the properties to the south are the the Hillcrest Apartments, and then the properties to the west is the other buildings and tenants and properties of the Wilbur PDD, including the Brook Ridge Strip Center, which is the most recent development out at this PDD for the Wilbur PDD. Some background: the Wilbur PDD was originally developed in 1983, and it's a highly customized PDD that has C2 development standards, and in addition to the C2 development standards, a few limited C3 district uses were permitted. However, Mr. Wilbur did not want to have the full gamut of permitted uses in the C3 district, such as grocery stores and some other more intense retail type uses. And so what he did is he used the C2, what staff has determined is the C2 development standards with the C2 uses, and adding a few C3 uses to it. So the actual zoning is PD C3 is what staff has determined with C2 development standards. So the specific property that we're looking at today is tracts 3, 4, 5, and 6, which have remained vacant lots throughout this PDD. So these are lots that have never been developed. What the applicant is proposing is a new office facility that would be a little over 6,750 square feet with an additional future covered parking that would extend to the north here. So here's the site plan with the building and the covered parking to the north. The scope of this PDD is limited to these lots, so it would not impact any of the other tracts within the Wilbur PDD, just the vacant lots here. The applicant is proposing a few variations, which we'll get into, that involve landscaping, buffering, screening, and then signage as well. So the PDD encourages innovative design by allowing flexibility in standard zoning, providing the end results equal or exceed the conventional zoning quality. And the process is twofold, where one, it requires a preliminary plan, which is going to have a preliminary PDD with an ordinance that will go to the City Commission. It also involves a preliminary site plan, which is what we're looking at today. And then that gets followed up by a final development plan that would come before the Planning Commission in the future. So the City Commission will get involved when we get to the ordinance of the preliminary PDD. So they will review that particular action. Zoning ordinance requirements: the C2's district establishes the zoning regulations, which this property and the proposed development meets all of those criteria, with the exception of the waivers and exceptions that are being requested. Those waivers consist of a landscape buffer shift along the north end. So there is a landscape, or there's a utility easement along the north end, and the applicant is proposing to shift the landscaping to the south end of the utility easement to remove any conflicts that the proposed trees and the conflict the trees would have and the plantings would have with the utilities. So that's the first waiver that's being proposed. There's also a screening fence waiver. This particular property has a nursing home to the east. It's zoned R3, which requires this property to have a screening fence between it and the property to the east. So there's a waiver that's being requested for that. There's also a front yard landscaping distribution variance. So typically the front yard landscape area is what we would consider the front yard setback area, which in this case would be the front 25 feet along Crawford Street, which is a south street that's adjacent to this, and the east street, the west street, which is Crawford Place. So this is a corner lot where it has frontage on both Crawford Place and Crawford Street, and typically you would have a 25-foot setback. Here, the applicant is proposing the front yard landscape area be all the landscape area between the building and the adjacent streets, and then maximum number of signs. The C2 district limits businesses to 2 signs, and the applicant is proposing to have 3 signs on this site, so that would be the fourth variation that's being requested. Looking at the suitability of the site for development under the existing zoning, the site is physically and legally suitable for the proposed office space. Really, the only reason that the preliminary PDD is being amended is to accommodate the proposed variations. Character of the neighborhood. If you look at the surrounding properties, you have residential to the north, so low density single family residential to the north, higher density multifamily residential to the east and to the south, and you have higher density commercial to the west. And the proposed office would be a compatible transitional node that would transition from the residential to the north and the east to the commercial higher density and higher intensity commercial development that you have with the rest of the Wilbur PDD. Public utilities, storm drainage and services, all of the services are present at this site. There is an 8-inch sanitary sewer line located, located at the north end, so this property does have access to sanitary sewer at the north end. There's also water, a 6-inch line in Crawford Place, and an 8-inch line in Crawford Street. And there's also sanitary, or storm sewer rather, 24-inch and 18-inch lines in Crawford Street. So there is adequate utilities and services on the site for the proposed development. Street and traffic. This would be a low-intensity nature professional office, which the city engineers and public works did not require a traffic impact study for because of its nature. And the property would have a little over 200 feet of frontage on both Crawford Place and Crawford Street. The proposed access would be off of Crawford Place with a 26-foot wide driving aisle in which you would come in and you'd have parking along the south side of the building, or you could drive and have parking that's covered for employees on the north side of the building. City Engineering and Public Works found no operational or safety issues with the proposed plan. Conformance with the comprehensive plan, the future land use map shows this property being part of a neighborhood center, and this neighborhood centers do allow for offices as well as neighborhood style retail, and the proposed development plan meets the locational and development criteria of the neighborhood center, incorporating compatible scale, pedestrian circulation, and quality exterior materials. So with that kind of addresses the zoning piece. with the final site development plan. The lot itself is 1.62 acres, which can easily accommodate the proposed development based on its size. It does have street access off of Crawford Place and frontage on Crawford Street. The building orientation is such that it has a setback of a little over 78 feet from Crawford Place and a little over 125 feet from Crawford Street. So it meets and exceeds the minimum setback requirements. The building design, the proposed building does incorporate several different quality materials. One is a blonde limestone veneer, which you can see graphicked here at the top image. There's also a charcoal face brick, and then blonde face brick as well. And then we have charcoal gray architectural metal with zinc gray architectural metal as well, and then aluminum storefront systems. So those are the primary materials that are being used. And we do have a few renderings that the architect has produced. This would be the main frontage that would be facing Crawford as you drive by, and you can see the proposed landscaping that's in front of the building, as well as the off-street parking that's on the south side of the building. You can see the limestone veneer, as well as the charcoal and blonde brick frontage and the aluminum window framing system that's being proposed. This is another view of the Crawford frontage, so the south facade of the building. This would be a view from Crawford Place. So if you're driving by on the west side, this would be the west elevation. This shows, again, the architectural metal, the limestone frontage, and you can also see the future covered parking structure that is also part of this application. This would be also facing Crawford Place, and this would be a view from the northeast elevation looking at the building. So off-street parking, the site does meet the off-street parking requirements without going over the 125% maximum that that professional offices are subject to. It has a loading unloading zone for supplies and materials being delivered, and the landscape buffer, the proposed plan does exceed the required amount of front yard landscaping along both Crawford Place and Crawford Street. Here is a comparison, just so that you know, because we do have a condition in here that the final site development plan, that the landscaping from the landscape plan for the project be incorporated into the final development plan. So this is what the landscape plan looks like, and this is the preliminary development plan. There's some slight differences, but having the applicant transpose or transfer the landscaping from the landscape plan onto the final development plan is one of the conditions that we will be recommending. Signage, this particular property has over 181 square feet that would be allowed based on its building frontage. It has building frontage on both Crawford Place and Crawford Street, so there is quite a bit of signage that would be allowed, and so the variation requesting 3 signs shouldn't be impacted by the minimum parking or minimum signage requirements that the site would have. Site plan review process, technical corrections, which we have identified as lot area data, landscape calculation data, building frontage corrections, and the compliant site lighting plan must be addressed on the final development plan. Staff analysis, this project represents a low-intensity, visually compatible infill development that would be on a tract that's sat vacant for over 40 years. Staff does support the variations, which we've noted, and that would include the 6-foot solid fence because of a 15-foot proposed landscape buffer. So in lieu of a solid fence along the east property line, the applicant feels it would be more aesthetic and more fitting in the character of the neighborhood if it had trees and plantings along that east boundary. And I'll show you, this is the trees and plantings that they're proposing. So it's a number of a mixture of shade trees, a mixture of ornamental trees, and a mixture of evergreen trees to create an attractive landscaping buffer between the subject property and the nursing home to the east. So suggested findings: while the applicant did not submit a formal schedule of development, the establishment of a condition of approval requiring the applicant to obtain a building permit within 18 months of a final development plan approval ensures that the plan development will substantially completed within the regional specific time. So all of these criteria are tied specifically to our code requirements for plan districts. Suggested number 2 is that the daytime operation of this professional office combined with the specific architectural finishes that we've gone over will not substantially injure or damage the use, value, or enjoyment of the surrounding R1 and R3 residential properties. Number 3, the site is accessible from East Crawford and Crawford Place, which are adequate to carry the low volume traffic generated by a 6,750 square foot office. The city engineering department has reviewed the circulation layout and determined that the driveway is adequate to serve the users without creating any traffic hazards. For number 4, the infill development of the permitted office use on a site already served by existing public water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer infrastructure and will not impose any undue burden on public services or facilities. Number 6, the applicant has filed on behalf of SRH Advisors, LLC, satisfying the requirement that the parcel be held in single ownership. Number 6, the required variation to shift the northern landscape buffer south is warranted by the design of the development plan and the amenities incorporated in it, as it accommodates the necessary landscaping while preventing tree roots from damaging public infrastructure within the existing 10-foot utility easement. This modification protects public utilities and is not inconsistent with the public interest. 7, the required variation to distribute front yard landscaping between the building and the street rather than strictly within the front 25 feet is warranted by the design and the development plan and the landscape amenities incorporated in it because the building maintains a close proximity to the street frontage, and the proposed distribution still fulfills the regulatory intent of having an attractive streetscape and is not inconsistent with the public interest. 8, the requested variation to allow 3 signs is warranted by the design of the development plan, providing necessary identification for the corner lot building with 2 street frontages. Because the total aggregate sign area remains under 180 or remains 181 square feet maximum, this modification is not inconsistent with the public interest. And then the requested variation to waive the 6-foot solid fence along with the eastern property line is warranted by the design of the development plan and the landscape amenities incorporated in it. The applicant is providing a 15-foot landscape buffer along the eastern boundary, which provides adequate visual transition between the proposed office use and the adjacent R3 property. This modification is not inconsistent with the interest of the general public. So here are the Planning Commission alternatives that we've identified. 1, you could approve the amended preliminary development plan with all 4 requested variations, subject to the conditions of approval recommended by staff, and transmit a favorable recommendation to the City Commission for the preliminary plan ordinance. Number 2, you could approve the amended preliminary development plan and all 4 requested variations with modified or additional conditions of approval and transmit a favorable recommendation to the City Commission with those modifications noted. So this would be like the last application where you could potentially modify the variations. That's what the condition number 3 here is. Number 3 is you could propose or you could approve the amended preliminary development plan, but approve only select requested variations or approve variations to a lesser degree than requested. For example, extending the allowed front yard landscape depth to 40 feet rather than the entire area up to the building face. The Planning Commission would then transmit a favorable recommendation to the City Commission explicitly outlining which specific or variations are supported and to what extent. Number 4, you could postpone consideration if additional information is needed. You would want to state such postponement date, or you could deny the application citing the specific findings thereof as to why you would be denying it. Staff's recommendation is to approve the application for an amended preliminary development plan, including the requested variations of the northern landscape buffer, the front yard landscaping distribution, the east screening fence waiver, and the allowance of 3 signs, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall submit a final development plan review and approval for the Planning Commission prior to issuance of any building permits. Number 2, the submitted final development plan shall incorporate all revisions outlined in the staff technical corrections punch list, which we've listed out there. Number 3, the development of the subject tract shall be completed in substantial conformance with the approved preliminary development plan, the 15-foot eastern landscape buffer, architectural building materials, and submitted material schedules. The building permit shall for this project shall be obtained within 18 months of the final development plan being approved, which that has not been approved yet. So that is the presentation. If you have any questions, let us know, please.
Thank you, Dustin. Very thorough. I need clarification. What was the reason for 3 signs rather than 2?
Yeah, I think Mr. Renz is here to speak on that.
Okay, well, when we're ready, I'll ask Mr. Renz to come up. Okay, that was my only question. Okay, commissioners, are there any other questions of staff? Hearing none, I would ask Mr. Renz to come to the podium.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. I'm Charles Renz with JGR Architects. To address your question, Carla, the reason for the 3rd sign is just simply because we are on a corner lot. We have the frontage there on Crawford. We also have Crawford Place, and so the intent is just not knowing for sure if we're going to do that, but we just want to know that we have the flexibility for some signage, more than likely just on the building at that location right there.
Oh.
We're not asking to exceed the allowable square footage or anything like that. The 180 foot is going to serve us well. It's just a matter of, just from a wayfinding standpoint and people coming in to have, a small amount of signage there at that location.
All right. Thank you, Charles.
Okay.
Are there any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Terrific.
Is there anyone in the audience that has a comment or concern? Okay, Dustin, is there anyone online?
We do have a few members online, but I believe they're on here for another application, but if they want to share anything, they're more than welcome. It does not appear they need to speak.
All right, hearing none, I would bring it back to the commission for a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve application PPDD26-001 with the 4 staff recommendations.
In a second.
All right, it's been moved and second to approve this application with the 4 recommendations from staff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we'll be moving on to the next application.
I will be presenting that shortly. It's going to take me a moment to get the next presentation pulled up, and then we'll get rolling.
Okay.
All right, so our next application is a request for a zoning map amendment, so a zoning change for the existing fire station number 4 that is going to be relocated to Crawford and Markley, and therefore the existing site is going to be decommissioned in the future when that takes place. And so what is being proposed is a zoning change from R single family, which is what the Fire Station number 4 property is currently zoned, to a a public use, public facilities zoning district. So the public use district was created for public properties, such as fire stations, police stations, libraries, government buildings, and the like, and it also allows for some conditional uses such as maintenance facilities. And so that's kind of where this is heading, potentially, eventually, but right now we have a property that is not conforming in that it's a fire station in a residential zoning district, and the proposal is to rezone it to a public use district. Looking at the surrounding properties, you have R properties, single-family properties to the north. You also have R single-family properties to the east. Get the laser pointer out. So you have R properties to the north and to the east, and then you have the Wilbur PDD, which we just talked about, directly to the east here. And you have a vacant C1 property to the south. So some background: the property is part of the Rolling Hills Edition, which is platted in 1959. The fire station was constructed in 1969 and has operated from this location since that time period. The new fire station number 4 is currently under construction, which will relocate it to the corner of Markley, the southeast corner of Markley and Crawford Street. At that point in time, this particular facility will be recommissioned and repurposed. And the city's facilities maintenance division intends to repurpose the property for a maintenance facility. And so what they are is the city's facility maintenance division. They are a division of Parks and Rec, and they are responsible for maintaining public properties and public buildings. So they're not so much concerning themselves with public spaces like streets, like the streets department would, but they go out and they work on the parks buildings and the playground equipment and making sure that all of our equipment and structures are maintained. So that's kind of their role. And Troy Reinert, who is the superintendent for that division, is here, and he's the applicant. And so when we get to speaking about their repurposing ideas, he can speak to those in more detail. Regulatory need: a maintenance facility is not a permitted use in the current existing R district, and rezoning the property to public use is a first required step. Maintenance facilities are not permitted uses in the public use district, but they are conditional use. And so the idea is that this property needs to be rezoned to public use to make it conforming for some sort of public use in the future. And if that public use were to be a maintenance facility, then that would require a public hearing with the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit. So the zoning ordinance requirements of the public use district: the existing fire station does meet all of those requirements, all of the bulk regulations and standard development requirements, with the exception of its lot depth. So the public use district has a minimum lot depth of 150 feet, and that would be the east-west depth because it has a Briarcliff address, so the main frontage is Briarcliff. The existing depth is 136 feet, so it is pre-existing, non-conforming as to the depth of the property. Looking at the suitability of the site for redevelopment, because it's a fire station that was an institutional structure and built and developed specifically for fire station use, it's not really compatible or usable as a residence. So it's not as simple as, well, we'll just shut down the fire station and somebody can go live in it. It's not really designed that way. And so that incompatibility is somewhat problematic, and therefore the existing property is really unsuitable for residential zoning and residential use. However, it could be suited for civic uses permitted in the public use district. The character of the neighborhood: the surrounding area is primarily low-density single-family residential to the north and then to the west, and there is commercial properties, primarily the the Wilbur addition to the east, and then a vacant C1 property to the south. And so the proposed public use district would be an appropriate transitional zone, creating that buffer between those commercial uses to the east and south from the existing residential that we have to the north and to the east, or to the west. I keep saying that backwards. Public utilities, storm drainage, and services. There is adequate facilities already serving the site. The site already has access to an 8-inch sewer line as well as water. And so the property is well suited for redevelopment with no new burden being added to the area, to the site. Street traffic, this site is accessed off of both Briarcliff and Marymount Road. So currently fire trucks can come in one side and then quickly from the bay exit the other. That's how the operation currently works. So there's plenty of good access. You're a partial of a block away from Crawford Street, so the street network is certainly adequate for any type of public use district or any type of public use that would be repurposed at this site. Conformance with the comprehensive plan, here's the future land use map. You see that the R1 zoned properties all are part of the suburban residential land use classification and the future land use map. And then you have the neighborhood center, that is the Wilbur addition, to the east, and then you have the existing property and the properties to the south that are all public use or public semi-public, which is a land use category within the comprehensive plan. And the public use district is specifically designed for this designation, so there is no amendment to the comprehensive plan needed, and the locational and developmental or development criteria within the neighborhood center district is being met, and this is a good transitional buffer again between the commercial uses and existing residential uses. So staff analysis, the proposed map amendment formally aligns with the property zoning with its historic civic function and the regulatory intent of the public use district. Approving the public use zoning provides the affirmative public benefit of adaptively reusing municipal infrastructure, preventing the building from sitting vacant and ensuring continued active maintenance for the site. The rezoning provides the planning commission with the authority to strictly evaluate operations of buffering through the required conditional use permit process and oversight not currently afforded through the R district. So what that means is if the maintenance facilities division comes forward with a conditional use permit to use this particular property as a maintenance facility, it would require a conditional use permit, which again would require public hearing with the planning commission and a specific site design that they would have to present to you and be approved by you before they can move forward with that repurposing. Staff suggested findings. Number one, suitability of the property. The subject property is not suitable for development under its existing R zoning. The site is fully developed with a specialized municipal structure constructed in 1969, featuring apparatus bays and commercial grade infrastructure that do not accommodate standard single-family residential occupancy. The site is inherently suited for the range of civic government uses permitted within the C4 or within the public use district. Finding number two, character of the neighborhood. The proposed rezoning to public use will not adversely affect the character of the surrounding properties. The site sits at a transitional boundary between residential and commercial zoning districts. Establishing a public district provides a logical step down between the C1 and C3 commercial intensities to the south and to the east from the residential intensities. Any potential impacts from the specific establishment of a maintenance facility will be governed and mitigated through a subsequent conditional use permit application. Impact on adjacent properties. The proposed change in use protects the living conditions of adjacent properties by replacing heavy fire apparatus with standard light duty pickup trucks potentially, and transitioning from a 24-hour operational cycle to what the applicant represents as a standard daytime business structure. Adequacy of public facilities. Adequate public facilities and services are in place to support the public use zoning. The site is currently served by existing water, sanitary sewer and storm, drainage infrastructure, and the establishment of uses permitted within the public use district will not overtax these systems or increase the demand on public facilities. Traffic and safety. The proposed rezoning will not create traffic congestion or safety hazard. The site has great access to both Briarcliff and Marymount, and the district will utilize routine traffic patterns that are inherently safer than historical high-speed emergency responses at the fire station. Number 6, conformance with the comprehensive plan. The public use district conforms to the public, semi-public on the future land use map, and applying the public use zoning district satisfies the plan's development criteria by providing a transitional buffer to minimize operational impacts on surrounding properties. Public welfare, approving the requested public use zoning will not harm the public welfare. The relative gain to the public is approving the map amendment is the affirmative benefit of adaptively reusing existing municipal infrastructure, which promotes civic operational efficiency and ensures continued active maintenance on the site. So the planning commission has the following alternatives. Number 1, they could recommend approval of the requested public use zoning. They could postpone consideration to a specific hearing date if additional information is needed, or you could recommend denial if this application provides the specific reasons and findings for this recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the requested zoning, and staff notes that this recommendation is strictly for the map amendment establishing the base zoning as a public use district, and that a separate application for conditional use permit would be required before a maintenance facility could be approved at the site. Yeah, so there's, there recommends approval or make a recommendation to the City Commission.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Are there any questions of staff? Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay, I open it up for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve application ZMA 26-002 based on the staff's findings.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve application ZMA 26-002. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right.
Waters, can I ask a quick question? Was that with any conditions or anything else to it?
I don't think there was anything else, was there?
I don't.
Just want to make sure.
No, I don't see. Okay. All right.
Not with all the other ones we had today, huh?
All right. We'll move into administrative items 3.4.
All right. Okay, this one's shorter. All right.
Okay.
Yay!
Yay.
So at our last meeting, we heard a proposal for a preliminary replat for the Salina family addition, which is Salina family's new location that they're working on redeveloping at Edison and Ohio Street. In that application, there was a condition number 5 that is a standard condition that basically requires final platting to be completed before any building permits can be issued. So that's a standard condition that we typically approve. And so this here is a request to adopt resolution number 2603 to remove condition number 5 from the approved Salina family addition preliminary plat. And the reason for this is because the Salina family project is working at a speed in which they are trying to obtain new market tax credits, and as part of that effort, they're trying to get a building permit prior to final platting being concluded. Now, one of the main functions of final plating, or plating in general, is to establish the location and dimensions of utility easements, drainage easements, and access. And so what they are trying to do is they submitted a petition on March 13th, which was after we had written the staff report for the actions that took place at March 17th, to, through separate instrument, have easements for utilities dedicated by the City Commission and have a easement for the drainage dedicated to the City Commission, or approved by the City Commission, and then a break in access along Ohio, which is part of the plat, but they're proposing to have those all dedicated through separate instrument at the City Commission's April 13th meeting, so that they can obtain a building permit prior to final plating being concluded. They can't do that because of this condition, and so what we've done is we've produced a resolution that would remove this condition, basically, is where we're at. So, contingent upon City Commission's approval, these separate instruments fulfill the primary purpose of condition number 6. Furthermore, existing conditions, the zoning map amendment publication, and the traffic impact study agreement remain in place, ensuring the city is fully protected before any permits are issued. Additionally, as we went through this process, we identified that there are 2 outfall structures for the storm drainage, which are these lines here that are kind of, let me get the laser pointer up, that outfall into the mapped floodplain area. And so the channel, the old Smoky Hill channel, river channel, is where the storm water is primarily being directed to, and the outfall structure happens to be in the floodplain area, which means they have to have the Division of Water Resources review it from the Department of Ag in the state of Kansas, and they also need a development permit from the city of Salina. So we're, in addition to removing condition number 5, we're also proposing to add a condition for that that piece of it, the project. So, staff suggested findings: the dedication of necessary public utility easements, a public drainage easement, and the approval of a break-in access through separate legal instruments contingent upon City Commission approval fulfills the primary intent of condition number 5 by legally establishing required utility and access rights prior to issuance of a building permit. Finding number 2, retaining existing conditions 1 and 4 ensures that the adequate interim protections remain in place, preventing the issuance of a building permit until the Uniform C3 zoning is published and the formal traffic impact study agreement is executed. Finding number 3, the addition of a new condition requiring a floodplain development permit for the proposed stormwater outfall pipes ensures that the development will comply with the floodplain management regulations of the city code, protecting public health and safety. So the Planning Commission has 3 alternatives that we've identified. 1, you can approve resolution number 26-3, which removes condition number 5 and adds the condition about needing a floodplain development permit for the outfall structures. Number 2, you could postpone consideration requesting specific future meeting date if you believe that the additional information is needed to make a decision. Or number 3, the Planning Commission could deny resolution number 2603, leaving the original 6 conditions of approval in place and provide its specific reason for that decision. Staff would recommend that you approve resolution number 2603, amending the conditions of the approval of application PP25-004, which is the preliminary plat that you reviewed and approved at your March 17th meeting. So these would be the new findings, or the new conditions. You would remove the original condition number 5 to allow the issuance of a building permit for Salina Family Health Care Center prior to submission and approval of final plat. You'd retain the remaining 5 original conditions of approval, and you would add the following new condition: prior to the installation of the proposed underground stormwater outfall pipes. The applicant shall obtain a floodplain development permit for work within the specific flood hazard area of this Old Smoky Hill River as required under Salina Code, Chapter 42. Any questions?
I want to comment one piece here. The applicants, just as of today, have already sent us correspondence from DWR that they've already had those plans reviewed, and so they're actually in the process of working on those floodplain development permits already.
Very nice.
Okay. Any questions of staff? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Oh, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Sorry.
We do not have anyone from the public. We do have
Okay.
3 representatives from Salina family here if there are any questions.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, online or in the room.
All right,
We have 1 in the room from Salina family and 2 online from Salina family, no one from the public.
okay. All right, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd recommend we approve Resolution 2603, amending the conditions of approval for application PP25-004 by removing the original condition number 5, retaining the remaining 5 conditions, and adding a new condition in regards to the flood hazard area.
Second.
It's been moved in second, what Mr. Meixel said. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, staff, is there any unfinished business or other business?
So those 2 rezonings and the PDD would be going to, they have a 14-day protest period, and then once that expires, sorry, the 2 rezonings and the PDD both have all 3 have a 14-day protest period, and then they'll be going to City Commission on April 27th. And our next meeting is April 21st, and we have 1 application, it looks like right now, that's a special use permit. And then the last item was in regard to there's a question at the last meeting about some updates on street projects. I
think that was you here, right?
In regard to Ohio and Chilling.
Commissioner Farber, weren't you discussing it, like the intersection at Ohio and Schilling? So I've talked to Public Works about that, about coming in and giving an update. We weren't able to line it up for this meeting, but we are looking at the next meeting. So our new director of Public Works, Ron, is he's done that before and where he was at before in Abilene, and he said he's familiar with it and he'd be able to come in. So I am still making sure that the next meeting will work, but yeah, it will be coming up and we'll get on that.
All right, is there one last call for anyone from the public? Yes, go ahead.
I just want to share something.
And please state your
Yes,
name.
I'm Ann File. I'm the Chief Operations Officer with Salina Health Education Foundation, Salina Family Healthcare Center. And really, I just want to say how appreciative we have been of the city staff in working through what is a very complex issue for us. But their attention to detail, their responsiveness, just their willingness to problem solve with us. It's really been instrumental in the success of our project. And I just wanted to say that publicly. So
All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I
And
appreciate
to show our appreciation of you, we had you sit through this meeting and wait till last.
Yes. And I appreciate the positive comments.
Yes.
So thank you for those.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, I will entertain a motion to.
Just a second. I don't know how it's set up, but we need to set these, the different issues up in order of, like this one was going to be short. There are 2 others that were short. The first one we did took an hour and a half. So I would suggest in the future that they be in a schedule where, these people had to sit around for 2.5 hours. They were online that long, and they could have been out of here in 15 minutes. And I think it's incumbent on us to do things in the appropriate way. And I don't know why it makes any difference what order they're in, but they ought to be in the shortest one first, going to the longest. That's my opinion.
I have a comment along that line also. And we had talked about, I think Commissioner Alt brought it up before, that that we maybe don't need all the information that's in the packet, a shorter version. Today's, and I know it was a complicated subject, and I commend you guys miraculously for all the work that you put into this stuff. And I don't know if we need to do that from a legal aspect, but it seems like that information is available to the public. It's available to us, to the applicants, to the neighbors. So if we could shorten that the delivery a little bit, that would.
Agree. We had pages read to us verbatim.
Yep.
You know, it's our responsibility to look at this online and be ready. And I don't like sitting through somebody reading to me verbatim. I'm sorry to get upset here, but I don't like people reading to me verbatim what I've already read. And like Pat said, if there's some legal thing, we'd like to know about it, but it's not necessary.
We'll make that clear in the next meetings, and we'll shorten them up for you.
Okay.
Or
I mean, of course, it will have to include the stuff that's legally required, but yes,
Sure.
no, I completely understand where you're coming from on that.
for an example, like during this one, could somebody just say, "Hey, can we take a vote now?" I don't know where the legal part is, but
Actually, do you mind if I answer kind of both pieces here, Commissioner Alt's and yours? It might give a little more insight. As far as the ordering of the cases, we do have public hearings are first on the agenda, and the quasi-judicial matters are first. Now, I will look into whether we have the ability to move those on the agenda. Sometimes legislative ones are not any shorter, and so unfortunately, if we structure the agenda a certain way to do public hearings first and legislative, and we are landed on that ordering, there's no telling if a case is going to be shorter or not. I don't know that we can actually order them shortest to longest, but I do see where you're coming from, and so I'll look at what we can look at as far as reordering the agenda. But like I said, I don't know offhand what kind of requirements there are for if public hearings go first or not, and so we'll look into that. There's another piece to that, and I kind of.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Could we have just, if somebody would have said, "Well, hey, this is too long," we could just.
So
we're good now.
So some of that might be, to an extent, possibly, but at a certain. There's a certain standard that we for the public hearing that we have to get certain information out. So I think by just shortening up the presentations, we could probably get there to where that doesn't become the issue.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't know if it all needed to fall on your shoulders, or if somebody could have just went. Yeah.
If we would have gotten halfway through and somebody raised their hand to do that, I would have probably had to stop that and make sure that we got the information out that's required for the public hearing. Right. But maybe we can solve this by just shortening up presentations.
Yeah, but that also falls into
to the extent that is reasonable.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to be unappreciative. There's a lot of work that went into what you did. Absolutely. But to his point, just a summation as opposed to word for word going through there, I think would be appreciated as well.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Please.
So moved.
Okay, moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.